Good morning, students. In today's class, we will learn about k-means clustering algorithm and we will solve a numerical based on this algorithm. So the question will come, we will be given the data points in this tabular format and the number of clusters, that is k, will be given, and also the number of iterations will be given. For the first iteration, they will provide you with the clusters value also. So let us suppose the question is given where k is equals to 2, that means cluster 1 C1 and C2, and the number of iterations is equals to 2, means we have to solve it till 2 iterations. And the centroid for the first cluster is C1, that is 185 for x and 72 for y. And the centroid for the second cluster C2, that is 170 and 56. So we will have to solve this tabular format data based on the k-means algorithm. So for the first iteration, we will calculate the similarity by using the Euclidean distance. So we have given the C1 cluster as 185 and 72 for x and y respectively. And for C2, we have given 170 and 56. So we will calculate C1 and C2 for point 3. Means for this point, we will start. That is 168 and 60. So by using this formula, 185, which is the value of C1 minus 168, value of third point, and 72, which is the value for C1 minus 60, which is the value of third point. So 185 minus 168 plus 172 minus 60 whole square, and we will take the under root of that. So after solving this, the answer is coming is under root 433. Same we will do for the cluster 2, C2, for point 3. So the cluster 2 values were 170 and 56 for x and y. So 170 minus 168, which is the x value of point 3, and 56 minus 60, which is 60 was the value of point 3. We will take the square root of both. After solving this comes to root 20. So once the value for the point, that is point 3, with C1 cluster and C2 cluster we calculate. After that we will compare that which value is less. So as you can see, the value root 20 is less than under root 433. And under root 20 value belongs to cluster 2. It means the point 3 will belong to cluster C2. Similarly, we will calculate for point 4. It means for 179 and 68. So 185 minus 179 and 72 minus 68. 185 and 72 were the values of C1. After solving this, we get under root 52. Similarly, with C2 point, that is 170 and 56, we will calculate the fourth point, that is 170 minus 179 whole square plus 56 minus 68 whole square. After solving this, we are getting under root 225. So as you can see, under root 52 is less than under root 225. It means the point 4 will belong to C1 because its root 52 is coming when we have applied the C1 cluster. Similarly, we can solve it for 0.5 and 0.6. So after that, calculating this whole, we can create a tabular data. As you can see, these were the points and these were their values for x and y. First and second point were taken as C1 cluster and C2 cluster respectively. And these were the value which we have calculated for point 3, 4, 5 and 6. So you can also compare it in the tabular format that root 220 is less than 433 and 20 belongs to C2. Therefore, we write C2 here. Similarly, root 52 is smaller than root 225 and root 52 belongs to C1 cluster. So we write here C1. Same goes for root 9, which belongs to C1. So we write C1 here. And root 34, as it's smaller than this, and root 34 belongs to C1. So we write C1. So we will make a tabular format data. And from this, the resulting cluster after first iteration is in cluster C1, the points are 1, 4, 5, 6. As you can see, 1, 4, 5, and 6 belong to C1. So we just make a diagram of it. And similarly, cluster 2, C2 belongs to second and third point. So C2 contains only second and third point. This completes our iteration first. Now we calculate for iteration 2. So for this, we have to calculate a new centroid points. As in the first, we have considered first and second point as C1 and C2. But after first iteration, we will calculate the new value of centroid. So the points which belong to C1 were 1, 4, 5, 6. So 1, 4, 5, 6 means for X we have 185, 179, 182 and 188. And these are the 4 points. So you can see 185, 179, 182 plus 188. And we have to take the average of this. This was the X point. Similarly, it comes to 183.5. Similarly, we calculate for the Y1. Y point is 72 plus 68 plus 72 and plus 77. After taking the average, it comes to 72.25. So centroid for first cluster C1 are 183.5 and 72.25. Similarly, centroid for cluster 2. So in cluster 2, that is C2, we have points 2 and 3. 2 and 3 means 170 plus 168 for X. And the average is 169. And similarly for Y, 56 plus 60 as 2 and 3 points. So we take the average of it, that is 58. So these are the new cluster points for C1 and C2. So now we will use these points to calculate the Euclidean distance as we have done in the first iteration. As you can see, for C1 and C2 for point 1. Now, as you can see, we are also calculating for point 1 and 2. You can also check it for the previous one also, but the answer will come as C1 and C2. So our point was cluster first is 183.5 minus 185. 185 was the value of our X point plus 72.25, which is the new value of our C1 minus 72. 72 is the value of Y, as you can see. So after calculating this, we get 1.5207. Similarly, we do for C2. C2 value was 169,58. So 169 minus 185, which was the value of 0.1, plus 58 minus 72. So after solving this, we get 21.26. So as you can compare this, 1.5 is less than 21. So 1.5 is coming from C1 cluster. It means 0.1 belongs to C1 cluster. Similarly, we calculated for C1 and C2 for 0.2. So our value for C1 is 183.5 and 72.25. And the value for 0.2 was 170 and 56. So you just put X value and Y value respectively. After solving this, you are getting 21.12. Similarly, for C2 cluster, the value was 169 and 58, and the value for 0.2 is 170 and 56. You can solve this, we are getting 2.23. As you can see, 2.23 is less than 21, and 2.2 is coming from C2 cluster. Therefore, 0.2 will belong to C2 cluster. In the same way, you can do it for 3, 4, 5, and 6 point. After solving this all, we can again put this in a tabular format. As you can see, these are the distances which we have calculated by using the Euclidean formula. Value C1 is less, therefore it belongs to C1 cluster. Here 2.2 is less, it means C2 cluster. Similarly, third is 2.2, which belong to C2 cluster. 6 is less than 14, therefore C1 cluster. 1.5 is less than 19, therefore C1 cluster. And 6.54 is less than 26, therefore C1 cluster. You just have to compare which value is less, and whichever value is less and it belong to whichever cluster, you just put that cluster in front of that row. So we have done with the second iteration. You can, the resulting cluster after second iteration is, as you can see in cluster C1 is 0.1, 4, 5 and 6. So one value is this, second value is 1, 4, 5 and 6. These are the values of these points respectively. And for cluster C2 we have third point and second point, 170, 56, 168, 60. So this completes our iteration 2. In question we have only asked for 2 iterations, so we have solved till here. And if more iterations are asked in the same way, you can calculate the new centroids by using these values, and again calculate the Euclidean distance and just make the tabular format. This was a K-means clustering numerical. Thank you.